And we're back. I've got my right hand man, John Wheaton, with me tonight. Appreciate you joining, John.
Yes, sir.
And we have our undercover S2 Intel subject matter expert. And I like the wallpaper tonight, by the way, S2. It's very, very suitable for the topic. Well done.
Glad you like it.
I do like it, actually. So I was just commenting to John and S2 that the brief for tonight's video is really, really long, and there's no possible way we'll get through everything. However, for those of you who are insiders, whether it's a free membership or paid membership, I've posted the brief for tonight's episode over there. It has got a ton of links on the topic of hoaxes, why we don't trust the media anymore, and just a plethora of examples of why they're at an all-time low as far as people's trust in them is concerned. Alrighty, so, oh no. Oh, I was going to say I didn't do the conflicted question, but then I just looked at the brief. It's super short, so this is going to be an easy one. I like this one, actually. So the conflicted question, that's from these decks here from conflictedthegame.com. We have no relationship with them as far as affiliate income. It's just really good stuff to put some thought towards SHTF situations before, God forbid, you find yourself in an SHTF situation. So the conflicted question of the night is, what is the perfect weapon for home defense and why? So John S2 and I will answer that at the end of this episode. We want to hear your answers down below in the comment section on whatever platform that you're watching Survival Dispatch News on. Tonight's episode is brought to you by CCW Safe, and I'm going to tell a little bit of background of this. I'll be as fast as possible. I got my buddy here who wants me to play fetch with him, and his name is Buddy, by the way. So going back several years, Survival Dispatch, we had a relationship with a very large company that's in the self-defense, coverage insurance arena. And we found out that they had a clawback clause where they could claw back money paid out to defend you. Now, that particular company has not exercised that clause, but just the fact that it was there was enough for us to kind of pump the brakes. So then we were approached by another one of these companies, and they had a clawback clause. And for some reason, there was just something didn't sit right with me. So I kind of slow walked it. And I'm glad I did, because they've had multiple instances now of doing a clawback. And the reason they did the clawback, they kind of boxed themselves into a corner. And I'm not naming names, by the way. We're not in the business of wrecking other people's businesses. If we promote something, that's because we believe in them. If we don't believe in something, we're not going to get into specifics and say bad things about people. So anyway, it's against the law to pay out insurance benefits to somebody who has broken the law. So let's say you have a really aggressive district attorney. They charge you, they push it all the way through to the end, and they say to your attorney, listen, your client, if he pleads to this lesser charge, that'll be the end of it, or we can go to trial. 95% of the time, the defense attorney is going to tell you, take the deal, don't roll the dice, do not risk decades in jail. As soon as you do that, though, you're admitting to guilt. And as soon as you admit to guilt, it is against the law to pay benefits out to you. So if they've paid for your attorney and, subject matter experts and all that stuff, you're toast. So then we got approached by another group that had a completely different angle on this, where they said, we will defend you no matter what. We will defend you criminal, civil, everything. And again, something in my gut just didn't feel right. So I slow walked that one, and am I ever glad that I did, because what happened with them is hidden in the fine print. It said, yes, we're attorneys. We will, we'll look after you. But the subject matter experts, the expert witnesses that you're going to need, yeah, you have to pay for them up front. So, oh, by the way, you need this $250,000 expert, and let us know when you've paid them, and then we'll carry on and defend you. So again, very thankful that I slow walked that one and we stepped away from it. 18 months ago, I reached out to CCW Safe, and I just by fluke, I ended up catching one of the co-founders, and I had an email exchange back and forth several times where they basically said, look, we do not have a clawback clause. We will never have a clawback clause. And the way that their model works is there's an insurance policy on CCW Safe protecting them against financial losses. But when you sign up for CCW Safe, there's no insurance policy placed on you. You get member benefits. And what that means is that if the cops confiscate your guns as evidence, CCW Safe will help you get new guns. They will pay for your defense attorney. They will pay for your subject matter experts. They will pay for criminal and civil. If you have a civil judgment against you, they will cover, I think, up to $1 million for that. So I ended up kind of missing them when we were in Vegas a few weeks ago, shooting a couple TV shows. They were there the day that we got there, but we had a problem with our rental. Long story short, we followed up the week after we got home from Vegas. We had some very productive conversations, and CCW Safe is now an official survival dispatch partner. Stay tuned. We'll have a lot more information on it, but it's something that took us a long time to come to this conclusion. And in this case, being pragmatic really paid off. So with that being said, tonight's topic is the distrust in media and the insane number of hoaxes that they've perpetuated against us, especially in America, but it's not just America. It's other countries as well. So there's an article on a website that if I say the name or if I show the logo, will be shut down on YouTube and probably Facebook as well. This particular website, and it's not Alex Jones, it's not InfoWars. This particular website, we used to put the links in the video descriptions. And I noticed about 6 months ago that if I put a link in the description for this website, the button to save the video description and details was grayed out. And then as soon as I took their name off, then I could save it. So it's one of the reasons we went to putting everything into a PDF for a brief. But I want to show you all this long list, and there's no way we're going to be able to get through all of them. But so this John Nolte cataloged this list of media hoaxes, and it goes on and on and on. And I'm not going to read through all of these simply based on the fact that we picked a handful of them that we felt were, probably the most grievous of them all and deserve the most coverage. So before we get into that, I just want to show some charts on the mainstream media here. Let me pull this up quickly. All right. So this poll is from May of this year. And it basically, when they ran this poll, they said 8 in 10 Americans don't trust corporate media to report facts. So one thing I want to throw in here is during the early 80s, there were hundreds of independent news organizations in the country. And I've seen people peg it at 500 or 600, but just suffice to say many hundreds. Today, almost all media outlets in the country, big, small, or otherwise, are owned by half a dozen conglomerates. So when you saw the videos that we played, and you probably saw them before that, where you've got all these talking heads across your screen, you hit play and they're repeating the same thing verbatim. That's because there's been this massive consolidation of corporate-owned news organizations. They're not news organizations anymore. They're arms of the cabal, globalist, NWO, whatever you want to call them. So this one here, though, is a little bit newer. And look at the precipitous decline from the year 2000 till now as far as trust in the media is. And this is an interesting chart here. So the green is the people, the Americans who have a great deal or a fair amount of trust in the media, okay? The next line here is the ones that don't have very much trust. And this line here is the people who have no trust at all in the media. I mean, they're astonishing numbers, and it's literally, their credibility is literally cratered. And I got to give props to JD Vance in his interview that he did with Jake Tapper. He absolutely smoked him repeatedly. I'm not entirely sold on JD Vance as far as being incorruptible, and we'll dive down that rabbit hole another time. But suffice it to say, he did a great job. So before we start getting into individual hoaxes, and we're going to cover the Russia collusion hoax first, I want to get both of your opinions on the current state of mainstream media and just how terrible they are, and any other comments, high-level comments that you have. So, John, I'll go to you first, then S2.
What we are witnessing right now, and I said this, I think when we were talking about Rogan, the Rogan interview a couple of days ago, we're in the last death throes of a dying art, of a dying medium of how information is disseminated. The internet has opened the floodgates that were previously controlled by mainstream media for decades, going back all the way to the founding of the countries in different ways. But no longer can these propagandists spin a narrative and push it out to the mainstream public without them being fact checked by real people. Basically just given what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank, but just not able to actually push the false narratives that they have historically. They're learning the stuff that we've already known for years. When the internet really exploded onto the scene, it opened up a lot of avenues. This is why people like Kamala Harris say things that, if she's elected, that Elon Musk is going to pay a price for disinformation.
Yeah.
This is the whole reason for it, is because they can't hide behind the spin of the media anymore. And after post Joe Rogan 3 hours sitting down with Donald Trump and speaking, the thing that's mind blowing about that, I'm going to rant for a little bit, not rant, but just kind
Let
of
her rip
on this. The command and control that Donald Trump had across the broadness of issues that they covered. I mean, from everything from UFC to global warming to oil and the need for that and how environmentalism worked. If you guys actually listen to what he's saying, the dude knows so much about this. And you only get that through a long-form sit-down conversation between two people. First of all, Rogan is a fantastic interviewer. I'm a big fan of his ability to interview and keep it conversational while covering big-ticket items. He's amazing at that, and he's really honed his skills in that realm. But this has changed media in a massive way. I don't think that you'll be able to get a major party platform's nomination going forward without being able to do these 3-hour-long sit-down conversations. That's scary to the media, because the reality is, even their slickest of politicians, like the Gavin Newsoms, well, first of all, he got disemboweled in a long-form debate by Ron DeSantis. They don't have anything behind their leftist talking points. When you actually start talking about policy with them, they're completely empty. They have nothing to stand on. They can't speak with any kind of knowledge about these things. And really, the smart people in the room are starting to realize this stuff. They're starting to realize, it's just like Elon Musk. He's starting to realize the left really doesn't have anything to offer him. And really what Trump is doing is he's bringing the smart people from that were traditionally left, that can be reasoned with and are generally smart people, and he's kind of putting them into this big tent with us. And I think it's a great thing going forward. There are some things that I disagree with and some things that we'll have to iron out down a long term, but I absolutely think that you're going to have candidates of substance that can speak to these issues in a conversational way that people understand. The media is dead. It's dead, and we're going to watch it die as they fall on their own swords when Donald Trump gets reelected.
How many myths did Donald Trump dispel by doing a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan? Kind of a rhetorical question. Like, as an example, they were claiming that he's mentally unfit, and that clearly that's not the case. And they were saying that he gets worn out easy. The guy doesn't sleep. He works 20 hours a day. It's insane. All of these things, he basically lined them up and knocked them down just by doing, an interview that was 3 hours long. And go ahead, John.
By the way, did you hear what Kamala's terms for Joe Rogan were?
No.
They came out today.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Rip them off, though.
They offered him on election day a 1-hour podcast, and he'd have to travel to them.
Yeah.
That's such a cover because they knew he would never accept that. Joe Rogan, it's called the Joe Rogan Experience for a reason. They take care of their guests. I actually have a close friend that went to Joe Rogan. On AI. He works for an AI company, and him and his 2 business partners went down to Houston. He goes to my church, and he's like, dude, it's amazing. You work out with the dude, you have lunch with him, you spend all this time. It's a complete and total experience that he wants his guests to have. And I understand that, trying to break onto the podcast realm, you want your guests to be relaxed and be able to have a conversation. You can't do that without having that experience. So this whole thing with Kamala was absolutely just a cover because they don't want her anywhere close to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, totally agree. So I played this video the other night ago, so I'm not going to play it again, but it's essentially Elon making the point that we're now in the age of citizen journalism, whether it be somebody like Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson, who have huge audiences.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
It's the method of disseminating information is amazing. I want to just make one clarification because everybody seems to have their own opinion or definition here, but I want to give you Survival Dispatch's position on this. Misinformation is typically, in my mind, is something that somebody got wrong. Disinformation is when they purposely got it wrong. Yep. And they have nefarious purposes by putting it out. Yeah, exactly. So S2, let's hear your thoughts on all this stuff. I know you've got a lot of passion when it comes to this crap.
Oh, well, where do I start? So, we know that all of these smaller media groups have been bought up by the larger, what I call the parrot cages, because that's what they are. Just got a bunch of people that have agreed to jump on the bandwagon and be the parrots in the cage, all saying the same thing and all learning the same thing. That's one area of it. And in contrast, looking at with Trump and all of that, he dispelled so many myths that they brought in about him being tired, him being mentally challenged, and blah, blah, blah. You can't sit down for 3 hours. I can't sit down for 3 hours, and I consider myself to be a pretty energetic and thoughtful dude with all the stuff I do throughout the day.
You are not telling the truth. You are not telling the truth, S2. We have done multiple episodes that have been 3 hours long.
Yeah, but it's not just been me talking. But it's not just been me talking. But you can't sit down for 3 hours one-on-one with somebody and have that kind of conversation and basically weave in and out of various topics, bringing them all back to a single central topic without having this thought process in your head the entire time of saying, okay, I'm playing chess here. This is exactly what I'm doing. I'm going over here with my rook. I'm going to take his pawn, and then I'm going to go over here with my knight, and then I'm going to go all the way back over here to my side of the board and go back home. You can't do that if you're mentally disabled or whatever they wanted to say that about him. As far as Kamala goes, I thought this perfectly put a bow on the fact that she has nothing of substance to say when they were asking her about the whole transportation department and saying, well, I think that what we have to fundamentally understand about transportation is, and what we're going to do about this problem is, we have to get from point A to point B. And I was just like, that was a no shit Sherlock moment for me. It's like, could you say anything dumber than that? And then finally understanding, I'll even, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but do you ever watch her mannerisms when she talks? Do you ever look at her face when she talks?
Yes.
What's the one thing she always does with her hands?
Well, she talks identical to Obama. Yeah, everything is
No.
hands.
There's one thing that she always does. She can't keep her fucking hands away from her face,
Yeah.
particularly her nose.
Oh, you're talking the cocaine
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, that one video
yeah,
is really telling. Recent video.
yeah.
I,
So, I mean, I've seen people. I've known people that have been on coke. I've known people that have been on
Yep.
meth, and every single addict of an opioid has a particular tell that, despite the physical appearances of things, they have a tell that tells you, okay, you're smoking meth, you're doing crack, you're doing coke. They all have it. Every single
yeah,
one of them.
some kind of stem.
Yeah,
It,
it's always like I can't keep my hands away from my mouth. I can't keep my hands off my nose. Whatever. So
I got this itchy nose going on tonight. Everybody's gonna be thinking that I've been doing some coke on the back end. It's just pre-workout, guys. Just pre-workout. So
that's too funny.
Whoa, dude! You're supposed to drink that stuff, not snort it.
Right.
Tonight was interesting. I actually had to dry scoop it. I don't know if you know what dry scooping is, but it's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
good
That's
time.
nasty.
Yeah.
That's
We
totally
didn't have
nasty.
any water in the truck, and I had to get a workout in. So, anyways, no, I think that well, to dovetail, it's the importance of the passage of time. It's the importance of the passage of time, guys. And I just love yellow school buses. I just love them. And an electric yellow school bus is just so great. Oh my gosh. I really do. I don't know if you guys saw that video with Obama and Biden talking kind of off camera, and they could read his lips what he was saying. And it is true. Joe is still a stronger candidate than Kamala.
That's a sad statement, isn't it?
That is crazy because he's a dementia riddled old man that should be, eating ice cream in the nursing home instead of in the White House.
That's another myth that Trump dispelled. He said she was a low IQ person.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of those, you start to realize the level of intelligence of a lot of politicians that have been successful. She's not the only one, guys. She's not the only one of these.
Bob Menendez, Mitch McConnell.
A lot of them from California on the Democratic side. Adam Schiff. I mean, this dude's going out and telling blatant lies because he knows he can get away with it while the Russia collusion stuff is going on. And the media is taking it, slopping it up. What'd you say?
Watermelon head.
Yeah. Pencil neck. I mean, he looks like a dude that I wouldn't leave alone with any child under 12 in a room for more than 5 seconds.
Any child, period.
Yeah.
Any child, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of which, here he is. He's one of the first stories to share tonight. So Steve Garvey says, Adam Schiff is guilty of treason for pushing the phony Russia collusion hoax and lying to the American people. And we know this unequivocally now. The fact that there's been no consequences is what really gets me, whether it be an Adam Schiff, an NBC, or anything in between. None of these people have been held to task for it. And that's what really bothers me. But
you know what I don't understand? You know what I don't understand about that? Why didn't Trump sue him for defamation?
Good question. I don't know. That's a great question. But check this out. This is 4 separate videos of Nancy Pelosi, 2017, 18, 2020, 2024, discussing Donald Trump. I mean, it's all they can talk about, right? And, they're going to do another Russian collusion hoax any day, guaranteed, right? In the home.
I want to know what the Russians have on Donald Trump. I think we have to have that investigation by the FBI into his financial, personal, and political connections to Russia. What do the Russians have on Donald Trump? Politically, financially, and personally. What does Vladimir Putin have on President Trump? Personally, politically, financially in any way. What does he have on Donald Trump? I think it's probably financial. I think it's probably financial, either something financial he has on or something on the come. I want to know what the Russians have on Donald Trump. I think we have to have that in.
So much like Kamala, I don't like Nancy at all. I think she's a really bad person, but she is quite a bit smarter than Kamala is. But with that being said, we still see they just repeat the same lies over and over and over again. I'm convinced they think that if they keep repeating lies, that it somehow is going to make them true. So on the Russia collusion, the Russia stuff, this one cracked me up when it happened, right? So the former FBI official who played a key role in the Russia crap was just sentenced to 4 years in prison for colluding with Russia. It's almost a year ago that this happened. This is a 5-minute segment with Kash Patel. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll play the beginning of it.
A Russian bill in a turn of events which is so wild that it almost sounds like it's the plot for some movie. Well, a former top FBI official played a key role in the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. Well, he himself was just sentenced to 4 years in prison because he was actually colluding with a Russian billionaire. Furthermore, those 4 years behind bars might only be the beginning, given the fact that the same FBI official is facing another set of indictments for hiding $225,000 in payments that he received from an Albanian intelligence officer. Again, if you wrote this into the script of a movie, it would just sound too ridiculous to be believable. The FBI agent who was investigating Trump for alleged Russian collusion, which was of course fake, is now himself in prison for colluding with Russians.
I don't think that's a big stretch, to be honest with you, because how many times have we discussed these guys projecting what they're doing onto Donald Trump and the rest of their adversaries? I mean, it's a pretty standard MO for them, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. They always
sounds
project.
like he shit in the fan and it came back on him.
Well,
Right.
Think about this. Michael Avenatti. You guys remember old Michael Avenatti?
Yep.
He was going to get Trump,
Yeah.
and him and the porn star running around. Well, what happened? That guy's in prison now.
Yep. Right where he belongs.
I mean, the reality is, and this is something that you almost have to square with yourself, is he said this on Joe Rogan. Trump did. I've been investigated more than anybody in political history. And he has.
More than Alphonse Capone. More than Alphonse Capone.
Alphonse Capone. Yes. That was exactly what he said.
He was a bad guy. If he didn't like you, he'd kill you. Look at you.
How many times have you watched that? But I think that what he's saying is absolutely true, because if there was anything that they could get him on, they would have gotten him on it. But they had to make up stuff. That's how bad this was. They finally had somebody who didn't come up through their ranks. This is the key point, I think. This is a key point for me. He didn't come up through their ranks, although he's been in their circles. Mm-hmm. He didn't come up through their ranks. We've talked about this ad nauseum. They find out your kinks, they find out your weaknesses, they find out all of those things the instant you get to Washington. Then they turn you on them. They turn you over by using those things, and then at some point, they'll let you vote your beliefs until the key point when they need you to do something, when they need you to carry water, when they need a John Roberts to rewrite Obamacare overnight, and he comes in sweating the next morning saying that they're passing it. That is the kind of stuff. It's not always, but it's it's mob mentality. They didn't have that with Trump. That's why
there's a pattern there, John.
Yeah.
There's a pattern there. There's a pattern there. Whenever there is large sums of money involved, that's when you watch the votes.
Yeah. When they stand to gain financially, whatever, from that. But the problem is, because he ran around in those circles and they didn't perceive him as a potential threat in this way, he knows a lot of what's going on. Dave Chappelle said it great in a comedy routine. He came out of the the circles of the elites and said the whole system's rigged. And he's like, I know it's rigged because
I use it.
And the reason that they won't get rid of the rigged system is because they use it too. And and at that moment, a star was born. So Trump knows all of the inner workings of these circles because he was running around in them. Albeit not partaking of the bad and the evil. You know, he said he had Jeffrey Epstein kicked out of Mar-a-Lago because he was propositioning young girls. It's documented. It's absolutely happened. He never partook in those things, and so they never had dirt on him. So when he becomes a star and he gets elected, and they didn't cheat enough to keep him from getting elected the first time because they didn't take him as seriously as they should have. Then all of a sudden, it got so bad for them that they had to manufacture a virus. They had to manufacture all of these votes and do all of this bad stuff in 2020 just to get rid of him. And now I think they've gotten to a point where they can't get rid of him because they have so badly exposed themselves by all of the lies they've told about him that now it's like people are like, well, that's not the dude. That's not the dude I saw on Joe Rogan. That's not the dude I saw for 4 years when I had more money in my pocket and my taxes were lower. Not the same dude. It's not Hitler.
Not at all. So,
hey John, it's almost as if it's almost as if he was handpicked.
What do you mean?
Just food for thought.
All right, let's get back to the Russia hoax here. Quick question.
Sorry, I went on a tangent.
It's all right. Are you aware, John, of anybody who's been held responsible for the Russia hoax?
No.
Neither am I. I don't think it
exists. No,
in
fact, one guy got paid. One guy actually got a payment from the CIA. Got paid for it.
Was that Michael Steele?
Yeah. No, that Steele got paid. Well, you're right. They did after the fact, but initially Steele got paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign to
Steele got paid because they took his phone. They improperly took his phone, so he sued for it and got paid.
Yeah, that's secondary to the fact. Let's get back to the Russia hoax. The Russia hoax started with Hillary's team paying him to write the Steele dossier of all these fake accusations of Trump collaborating and colluding with the Russians. And clearly that didn't happen. But the reason I asked you, John, if you had heard of any instances of somebody being held responsible for it, the CIA and NSA are not allowed to spy on Americans domestically. That law has been on the books for many, many years, and that is the realm of the FBI. But the CIA went to the Five Eyes spies, right? So this is Canada, Great Britain, New Zealand, and Australia, and asked their spy agencies to gather information on Donald Trump. And these two assholes are on the screen right now were the ones behind it. And neither of them has been held responsible for it. And that's where I have a big problem with this, is it's not just the media, which are the lackeys for these people spreading these bullshit lies, but they're never held responsible for anything. They don't end up getting even the slightest little teeniest bit of punishment for what they do and what they've done. So let's move on to the next one here. We're still on the Russia stuff, but speaking of Joe Rogan, here's part of the conversation that he had with Donald Trump on this very topic.
The Russia hoax was a big hoax. It was all a big hoax. So
well, that's clear. That's one example. That is a good example.
That's a big example. They say it made a 17-point difference. That's a big example, but that's only one. And you can go into the ballots where they wouldn't give you access to the ballots. You could go into the ballot harvesting. You could go into $500 million for the lock boxes.
But just in terms of narrative, so there's two things, right? There's the Russia hoax. There's the collusion with Russia that was never proven, right? That's
one. Well, no, it's proven it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. But they talked about it on
television.
But it took
2.5 years to prove.
But not only that, but it was a constant narrative on television. So
Sure.
that's
And-
a constant
and-
narrative that gets into people's minds, especially low information people that just watch the news,
Sure.
that you're in collusion with Russia. So that's one.
Sure.
So that changes the narrative. And then
Right.
you have the 51 former intelligence agents that work with the original Twitter and get them to remove links. You can't share it on DMs. You cannot share that story. They swept that story because they said it was Russian disinformation, even though they knew it was not.
100%.
So that's two examples that are real examples. Now, anyone who considers himself a legitimate, objective observer of American politics, if you really want the best person to win, you would want people to not lie. And the only reason why they got away with this lie was because they continually labeled you as this horrible threat to democracy and Hitler.
Yeah.
They
But-
kept saying you're going to be a dictator, ignoring the fact that you weren't a dictator for the 4
Correct.
years where you were
The
actually
opposite.
the president.
So I want to share a short segment from Vivek Ramaswamy here on this as well.
They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go. Mr. Ross, this is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election. Laptop story,
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to
That's how
Governor
the United States
Christie. Why you?
Oh no, he's right over the target. We need to stop him from talking.
Quiet.
Let's play JD Vance's conversation with Jake Tapper on this. I swear to God, Jake Tapper. I don't know that I've seen too many men who are actually weaker than this guy. He's such a sniveling little puke. But anyway, let's hear this exchange because JD Vance smoked him in this entire interview, not just this segment.
Agrees with that, but he's talking about
you do based on the way you're asking the question.
based on the fact that he's accused people that didn't break the law of breaking the law when it comes to the election. And if you want to revisit that, I'm happy to. But Liz Cheney, he said, should be put before a war tribunal. None of that sounds fascist to you at all?
No, of course it doesn't. Of
Putting
course
Liz
it
Cheney
doesn't.
before a military
First
tribunal?
of all, I don't buy into the premise of what you're saying, Jake,
These are
because I
things
just
he said.
on things that
These
I
are
know
things
that
he
he
said.
said, on things that I know that he said, you're imputing things, you're taking words out of context, you're taking two separate conversations and pretending
No, I'm
that they
not.
were made at the exact
No,
same
I'm not.
time. So I'm rejecting the premise of your question. I frankly don't believe what you're saying about Donald Trump's words. If you'd like to put up a clip and actually put him in context, I think the American people would realize that Donald Trump is a hell of a lot more reasonable than the people like Liz Cheney who would like to lie us into war. Now, Jake, we also have to remember, step back a little bit. Well, ask yourself a basic question about network integrity. You guys talked about the Russia hoax nonstop.
The FBI was investigating it. The FBI was investigating it. So we recovered them.
And so you took the words of unnamed FBI agents and put them on your network as if they were the gospel truth. You did it again and again. A viewer of your network would have believed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin conspired in 2016.
No.
That was totally and preposterously false.
No.
Well, that's
what you just said is
why.
false. We covered an FBI investigation. I don't know why you want to talk about the FBI investigation.
You covered it in a way that gave credence to anonymous sources' accusations. You did it yourself. Your network did it, Jake. But again, can we talk about the issues that Americans care
I'm
most
talking about things that Donald Trump has said.
Yes.
If you have
And
an issue
Kamala
with whether or
Harris-
not he's talking about the economy enough, that's between you and your running mate. I'm talking about things he has said this week.
Every single rally.
Oh my God, I can't believe what a pussy Jake Tapper is.
That is the most eloquently beautiful murder on live TV that I've ever witnessed. That was just eloquent murder.
He smoked him. So here's some comments from Tucker before he left Fox. It's a long clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I will play the beginning. This is the last piece of content that we have to share on the Russia hoax.
Tonight, in the summer of 2016, the government transparency organization WikiLeaks released thousands of emails from the servers of the Democratic National Committee. Those documents showed conclusively that Hillary Clinton partisans had worked to rig the Democratic primary against her rival, Bernie Sanders. It was obvious from the start that that email dump had come from an internal source, probably from a DNC staffer who was offended by the corruption of the Clinton team. But of course, the Democratic Party couldn't admit that. Too embarrassing, too revealing. So instead, in order to cover this wrongdoing, the Clinton campaign claimed that Russia did it. The Russians hacked the servers. Remember that? Now, you may have believed it or not, but intel agencies in this country must have known at the time that it was not true. They would know, but they said nothing. And they said nothing because blaming Russia turned out to be a very useful political tool. In fact, before long, it became the default response to every perceived disaster in Washington. Hillary lost. Why Russia? Donald Trump can't be president. Why Russia? Hunter Biden's laptop is here. Russian. Audit aid to Ukraine? Can't. Russia. And so on and so on. So over time, probably inevitably, the inflated threat of Russia became a pretext for everything bad, including.
All right, so we'll stop there with Tucker. John, I'll go to you first. I mean, this whole Russia thing that started with Hillary Clinton and just steamrolled. I agree with Tucker there, is it laid the groundwork for the Democrats' playbook of constantly assaulting Donald Trump with these fake accusations and hoaxes. Now, keep in mind, tonight the conversation is not just Donald Trump. It's the mainstream media in general. And them not only buying into these hoaxes, but pushing them for years and years. I mean, I just saw Joe Biden a matter of weeks ago repeat the whole fine people hoax again, even with their shitty left-hand fact checkers at Snopes saying it was a hoax. He never said it. So on the Russia stuff, John, last kick at the can on this one. Do you have any parting thoughts on the Russia hoax?
Well, it was a foundation. And as you just said, Tucker said, they had to lay groundwork in order to be able to do this for 4 years and run the blocking mechanism that is the mainstream media to keep him from getting to the normie norm. That was the whole purpose of this. What's going on right now is the floodgates have been open. It's in the water table. It's in everyday America. People clearly see the contrast of what life was like 4 years ago versus now. But none of what happened would have been able to happen over Trump's presidency. All of the lies, all of the deceit that the media put forth on the American people, none of it would have been able to happen had this not taken hold in the media, in the intelligence agencies, in all of this stuff. And you have to understand, this is where on this channel we rave against, government control, and we are libertarians and conservatives, is because we understand that the government has to be in check. Just because somebody's from the government doesn't mean that they're a good person, and there are bad people on both sides. I would generally say that most of them are on the left, but we have bad people on our side. We have Mitch McConnell and all these other people. The problem is those people work together in Congress, and I'm not just talking about Congress, I'm talking about together Congress. They are spinning narratives to try and maintain control.
I would argue that Mitch McConnell is not on our side, that he's just part of the political theater. That's
exactly where I was going next, was because these people like the Mitch McConnells even go back to John Boehner and Paul Ryan. All of those guys were bad guys. They were pushing narratives. They were lying. They were all of these things. Paul Ryan was smart enough to get out of politics when he saw that he was just going to get his butt handed to him constantly. But now he's gone into media. So it's always ironic that these people, it's amazing that the people that are working as staffers or working as people in the administration on the left, they always end up in news media. Always. Almost like they're working together all of the time.
Right?
I mean, call me crazy. But yeah, that's the reality of it. And if we that's what the beauty of this turning of the media, and that's what I'm going to call it, is it's just the turning of the media, where now the everyday person is a journalist. You've got a camera on you almost all the time. You can video, you can see evidence, and that's why platforms like X are so important, is because it allows us to post that stuff and immediately debunk this garbage.
Yeah,
Everyday
absolutely.
people.
So I want to try to get some more stuff covered here. So I'm going to pivot to the Hunter Biden laptop story, and then I'll start with US2 once I get down the road with that. But suffice it to say that the 51, people who came out, intelligence people came out and said, "Oh, this is a lie. It's a hoax. There's no such thing as the Hunter Biden laptop, and Hunter Biden never did anything wrong," so on and so forth. Well, this video here is a pretty good compilation of contents that came off of that laptop. So if you haven't seen this before, there's probably some stuff in here that'll shock you, but there was no question that it was legitimate. And I've seen reports say that somewhere between 7 and 10% of people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 would not have voted for him if they had seen the truth as far as the Hunter Biden laptop's concerned. So maybe that would have made the election, maybe Donald Trump would have won because it didn't cheat enough to overcome a 7 to 10% spread, quite possibly. But let's check out this compilation of wonderful things that Hunter Biden has done.
Ready for war, Joe? How you on the bloating spot? I know these dirty cops that'll get us in if we murder some wop. Hop in your Hummer, the punish is ready. Leave me and Beatles with noodles, we do this do while he's slurping spaghetti. Everybody kiss the fucking floor, till we crack, fuck them all. If they move, noodles, shoot that fucking whore. Dead in the middle of little did we know that we riddle to middleman who didn't do diddly. It'll be a cold day in hell the day I take it out. Make no mistake, for real, I wouldn't hesitate to kill. I'm still a fat one that you love to hate. Got you at your mother's waist, smack you then I whack you with my structure, yay. I'll rub your face off the earth and curse your family, children like Amityville and drill the nerve in your cavity filling. Insanity's building a pavilion in my civilian. It can't be the anarchy that humanity's feeling. A villain without remorse who's willing to out the boss forever and take all the cheddar like child support. I support running anything he does, anything he loves. A brother from another mother.
All right, so that's enough of that. I can't listen to that crap anymore. I will say this. If you watch the Joe Rogan, Donald Trump interview.
Did I hear Diddy in there somewhere?
Yes. If you watch the Donald Trump, Joe Rogan interview, you heard Joe Rogan say countless times, "We'd love to show it, but we don't want to get a copyright strike." I'm telling you right now that short clip that I just played, there will be an email in my inbox not 20 minutes after we wrap this up saying that your video is either blocked because of a copyright complaint or your video's demonetized, which, doesn't really matter to me because we don't make any money off of YouTube, to be quite frank. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that it may not seem like much to you, but we stick our neck out on the line every single time we play a clip like that. And that's why you don't see guys like Joe Rogan saying that. But at the end of the day, if we get kicked off of all the bullshit platforms and we're just on the free speech platforms, Rumble, X, and CloudHub, so be it. I made a conscious decision a couple weeks ago to put this stuff back up on YouTube because people need to hear exactly how crappy this stuff is. So, S2, I'll go to you first. Hunter Biden laptop. 2 questions. How much of an effect do you think it had on people's voting in 2020? And number 2, I know where you're going to go with this, but I want to hear it straight up as far as the 51 intelligence experts who said it was bullshit and your thoughts on what they should be, how they should be punished, because I think they need to be punished. It's all US too.
Well, do I think it would have had an effect on people? Yes. I mean, those of us that were sitting out here outside of the normie bubble, we saw it. We had an opportunity to view it before the election, but it didn't change my mind one way or the other as far as that was concerned. However, in normie land, I think it might have changed a lot of people's minds and could have had a direct impact on their decision, because we're hearing it. We've been hearing it. If I had known all of that before, I wouldn't have voted for Joe Biden. Okay, well, there we have the proof of that. As far as the 51 intelligence agencies, if I had to say, I can't really say that them coming out and saying what they said was treason, because it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Um, it would be like me saying the sky is gray when it's really blue. Um, I think there was a shadowing of the truth there, but that's what they do. I mean, for instance, the statement was made earlier that the NSA and CIA cannot spy on Americans. That's absolutely not true. And I'll tell you why. Because the NSA and the FBI can partner up with the FBI, they can become dual credentialed. There's many agencies that become dual credentialed within the intelligence apparatus, and that's how they do it. The FBI has the onus to be able to work on American soil, and if those agents within those agencies are dual credentialed, they are under the umbrella of the FBI. The FBI is not a law enforcement arm, it is an intelligence arm. They manage crime, they fabricate crimes. So these intelligence agents that were saying that the laptop was not true, um, I honestly don't know how to punish them other than to make it so that they can't walk down the street and show their faces ever again, and not ever hold an office within any of those intelligence agencies or have any influence over them ever again.
Yeah, so there are protections that were passed by Congress that specifically forbid the CIA from spying on Americans in America. And when they leverage the dual credential stuff that you described, they're doing an end run around the intent of the law, but they are absolutely forbidden as a standalone organization to spy on Americans. And there's mountains and mountains of that out there. And what they did with the Five Eyes countries was an end run very similar to leveraging, the FBI. So I'm not saying that they don't do it. I'm saying that there is a law that specifically forbids it, and they don't care. They just flat out do not care. Hi, John, your thoughts on the 51 intel officers who put the letter out and said, this is all a lie. It's disinformation. Hunter Biden never did any of these things.
Has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, was what they said.
Right. Back to Russia.
They knew this crap. They knew it was true. They just realized, as has been proven now, that it would have a massive effect on the election. And all of the work they did to stuff drop boxes with ballots and bring them in and all of that kind of stuff would be completely and totally overwhelmed by a certain percentage of the voting bloc just shifting its vote at the last minute.
So let me ask your opinion on this, John. Is that not election interference?
100%.
Okay.
You don't even have to get to Dominion voting machines to have enough to overturn the results of the election. You don't have to get to that. That was honestly one of my bigger frustrations with how the post-election was handled with the Sidney Powells and all of that stuff, was that we focused on the hardest thing to prove. Yes, I completely believe that the Dominion voting machines were rigged and probably changed a lot of votes. But you didn't even have to get there. You didn't even have to go there. You could have went straight to the Hunter Biden story. You could have went straight to all of this other stuff and the voter rolls and all of this other stuff. Much easier proven stuff. And and I truly believe that was a lot of advisors that were making the wrong calls. But you didn't even have to get there in order to prove election interference, tampering, all of this stuff. But I do have an appreciation that Trump has not wavered on the fact that the election was stolen from him in multiple ways. And he was absolutely right. And I completely support that. And I think that really what he has done over the last 4 years is to open a lot more eyeballs than ever were opened before. Because I'll tell you this much, dude. I'll tell you this much. If they cheat enough to overturn this election, there's going to be a lot of people that realize just how dirty American politics are. And it'll be the beginning of the end for the deep state if they try and do that. I think it is either way, but I think it'll be a lot more, shall we say, rapid and maybe violent if that happens.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The article that I have pulled up here, I'm just going to read this fairly quickly, but it puts a really fine point on this whole thing. And this is in reference to the 51 former intelligence officials. They are supposed to be a nonpartisan group of top spies looking out for the best interests of the nation. But the 51 former intelligence officials who cast doubt on the Post's Washington Post, Hunter Biden laptop stories in a public letter really were just desperate to get Joe Biden elected president. And more than a year later, even after their deep state sabotage has been shown again and again to be a lie, they refuse to own up to how they undermined an election. And that's my concern, undermined an election. The officials, including CNN pundit and professional fabricator James Clapper, a man who was nearly charged for perjury for lying to Congress, signed a letter saying that the laptop has the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. And what proof did they have? By their own admission, none. We do not know if the emails are genuine or not, the letter said. They're just suspicious. Why? Because they hurt Biden's campaign, and that's evidence enough. I mean, golly, like these are, if this doesn't support my ongoing argument that our government is directly under the control of our enemies, I don't know what does. S2, do you want to add anything on the subversion of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal? And I'd like to hear your opinion as well on those 51 guys as far as what they should face. Or actually, you know what? Let me hit the rewind button. I started with you, didn't I, S2? I got out of order on this. It completely messed up my rhythm.
Well, John just spoke, so
yeah, let S2 go because I did just bloviate for a while.
Well, I'm just used to going to John and then S2, but I think we started with you, did we not, S2? If you have more to say, go ahead.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So
no, I really don't. I think the Hunter laptop thing has been blown out completely. That horse is dead by now. What do you do with the 51 intelligence officials? First off, I want to know, these guys are supposed to be looking out for the best interests of the country. What authority do they work under that gives them the ability to do that? Are they working for Palantir? Are they working for some of these other agencies out there, these private entities that are actually arms and legs of the official intelligence agencies? That's what I want to know. Who the fuck do these guys work for, and what gives them the authority to speak on anything of this matter?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I apologize for the confusion. My Tuesdays start at 0800 and go to 2200 with back-to-back meetings and podcasts. So by this time of day, I'm running on fumes. Not a lot of gas left in the tank. So let's move on to the next hoax that the media has foisted upon us. And that's the hands up, don't shoot hoax. And this article here does a great job of summarizing. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I will read a couple points right here in the middle. It's been 10 years since the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, launched violent riots and a movement that is largely based on misinformation to this day. Brown's hands weren't raised. Brown did not say don't shoot. Brown was not shot in the back. Brown was shot in the front. Brown was attacking police officer Darren Wilson. Eyewitnesses quoted uncritically in the media were lying since they couldn't have seen the events. And look at the size of him. He was a big kid, thug, whatever you want to call him. And the whole episode has been proven to be a complete and utter hoax. There's not a shred of honesty to the whole thing. So here's my beef with it right here. So we have a panel of CNN cat ladies here that are all, doing this hands up, don't shoot baloney. And here's an even better one, because this one specifically calls it out for being a false narrative, pardon me. But when Donald Trump started calling CNN very fake news, he could not have been more accurate. So we're back to an event happens, the propaganda division of the globalists, which is all these mainstream media outlets, takes the story and distorts it when it's easily distorted and gets everybody whipped up into a frenzy. I mean, John, I'm going to go to you first just so we can keep it in order. So again, that I don't get off track here. How much do you think this story, or do you think this story at all, the Michael Brown story, played into any of the BLM riots?
Yeah. So I'm little geographical note for me. I'm about an hour and 45 minutes from Ferguson, Missouri.
Okay.
Very, very close. We were very aware of this going on in our local communities all the way up to St. Louis, that St. Louis area, which is where Ferguson is. This was the first time that you saw this festering, I guess you could say. I think the culmination was probably 2020 with the St. George Floyd riots, because that was nationwide. This was something that the media put a microscope on, a local issue, and blew it up. So yes, this was the start. This was them acting out of the idea of critical race theory and all of this other gobbledygook that Marxist communists love to divide free people and free nations on. That's the whole purpose of this. That's the whole purpose of Black Lives Matter. It has nothing to do with them caring about black people. Go to the inner cities and see if Democrats care about black people. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for generations. Stop talking to me about that and vote these people out of your inner cities. They have the black people back on a plantation. I can tell you that for sure. Because and that is the inner cities, and they have control over them, and they do what they want. And then they whip them up into a frenzy to try and make it seem like they care, to try and make it seem like they are actually benevolent and want what's best for them, but they don't want what's best for them. And they use them as tools of propaganda to further a Marxist narrative. That's all this is. That's all Black Lives Matter has been. And you can see that by the leaders of Black Lives Matter, and go as recent as 2021 and 2022, they weren't using the funds from the fundraisers that Black Lives Matter raised to help with the black community. They bought multi-million-dollar mansions, multiples of them, for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they don't care. And I could go off on this for a long, long time. But yes, this was the start of the whole thing and the culmination. And I do think it's lost a lot of steam since 2020. And we saw the after effects of that. And, most people know that George Floyd did not die from choking. He died from a drug overdose. He died from heart failure from a drug overdose. And that's
offensive. It's offensive to see people like Van Jones go off on this whole thing and saying, we witnessed, Derek Chauvin murdering, Floyd, blah, blah, blah. And it's all
Derek
lie.
Chauvin should not be in prison.
Absolutely.
You know why? Because I like one of my friends, my partner with Righteous Savages, is a SWAT police officer. You know what the Minneapolis Police Department trained their men to do, their officers to do? To kneel down on the middle part of the back of an assailant to keep. It was a trained method of keeping them under control. And if you saw George Floyd, he was a big dude. He was not a small person. He was like 6'5", 240. He was not a small guy. That's why, even impaired by drugs, he was still hard to handle for the police.
There's footage from other angles that show exactly what you just said. I mean, this was a disinformation crime committed against the American people in pursuit of dividing us. Everything from the Democrat side, and don't get me wrong, I don't like the Republicans either. They're shitbags as well. But the Democrats, everything is divided by race, gender. They want to put everybody into their lane and their boxes and then exploit that.
And the whole goal, to me, the whole goal with the media is to get to the Karens, to get to the white liberal. Their whole narrative is to get to the white liberal women living in the suburbs. They don't have to go through the inner cities, and they just feel this desire to be these benevolent, busybodies. And that's their whole goal. And that's what the media feeds off of. That's what they've fed off of for years. It's the media of the Karens. They're probably the only ones that view the media in a positive light. That 10% or 20% is probably all the Karens.
And I don't disagree with that. That's probably it. Before we move on, S2, your thoughts on the hands up, don't shoot baloney?
So what's been done over the last 4 years has been a color revolution. It's where you take events and blow them out of proportion to get a public response that cannot be answered except under color of law. And that is exactly what we are experiencing right now, is an attempt at a color revolution in this country to bring communism into this country. BLM is a Maoist organization. They are not a communist organization. They're a Maoist organization. This is what they do. This is what they have always done. The question that I have over all of these last few subjects that we've talked to is, let's go back in history. When did Russia become our enemy? That's what I want to know. When did it become okay to pin everything on Russia? Did we have Russian spies in our country? Yes. Did we have American spies in Russia? Yes, we did. So we were doing it to each other. When did Russia become our enemy? That's what I want to know. That is another form of color revolution that they have been fomenting in this country since the 1950s. Is the red horde is coming here, and it's Russia. No, it's not Russia. It's fucking China. People need to get their heads out of their asses and realize exactly what's going on. And what's going on right now is the attempt of a color revolution. Victoria Nuland all but comes out and says it directly herself. She did it in Ukraine, and she's doing it here.
Yeah, it's and when you look at the marks of the Maoist revolution in China, and you look at what BLM is doing and what critical race theory is doing, the same thing. When you look at what Mao did, what did he do? Destroyed history, took down old monuments to history, did all of the same things that BLM's doing. The whole Charlottesville thing, that was over Robert E. Lee's statue. Robert E. Lee was one of the most brilliant military commanders. And honestly, if he would have had the resources that the North had, he would have kicked the North's butt in about 6 months. The problem is he didn't have that. He was a brilliant military commander and was standing with his state. He was actually offered the command of the Union troops when the war broke out. And he said, nope, I go with my country. Back then, they called their state their country. They considered the state of Virginia to be their country. We're the United States, and that is my country. So that's why he went with it. He wasn't fighting on the laws of slavery. He was fighting on the laws of his state, went a certain way, and he was staying with his state. So that's all, the kind of history that they don't want to teach people, that it's actually, history is nuanced. History is not always black and white. It's a lot of shades of gray. There's a lot of bad things that happen in war. There's a lot of bad things that happen in revolutions. There's a lot of bad things that happen on a day-to-day basis because we're all human beings and flawed and sinful. That's just the reality.
Yeah, you want to talk about how much the Democrats care about black people? You mentioned it. I'm going to use your state as an example.
Yep.
The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, who has allowed all of the illegals to come into Chicago and been giving them carte blanche to do everything. Meanwhile, the citizens are standing up there in front of him to his face telling him, we're voting you out. And he just stands there and smirks at them like he's going to continue staying on that throne forever. It ain't going to happen, Brandon Johnson. You're getting voted out. Kiss your ass goodbye.
Here's an interesting thing. You want to talk about how much Illinois cares about its citizens versus illegal aliens? A judge in Illinois passed a ruling that illegals could own and possess firearms.
Firearms. Yeah.
We can't without a firearms owner ID. Do you know what you have to get a FOID in Illinois? You have to be a citizen. You have to have all of the documentation. You have to have a birth certificate and a driver's license. They ruled all of that not needed for illegal aliens to own any gun that they wanted. They were not
just the same.
Any of the assault weapon bans, anything.
Well, it's the same thing that they're doing for all the trannies out there too. So we have to protect ourselves. Yeah, you're damn right. You got to protect yourself. You don't belong in this country, and you're getting removed.
Not soon enough, right? So let's move on to the next hoax, I should say. And I've only got a couple specific to this because
Jussie.
We're back to Illinois. I mean, Illinois is like the center of all this bad stuff, John.
Well, you know, we have all those MAGA gangs running around in Chicago. I mean,
well, let's talk about that.
talking about Ford trucks and everything else.
Yeah, this is MAGA country.
So
in the subway,
CNN was amongst the worst for hoisting this.
Kamala Harris pontificated on this story.
January 2019, Smollett says he was attacked. February 2019, two brothers confessed to plot. March 2019, Smollett is indicted on 16 felony counts. All charges are dropped. Police release investigative reports. Judge approves a special prosecutor. February 2020, grand jury returns a 6-count indictment. And these are the brothers, and we're going to talk about them in just a second. And I guess this article on CNN's part doesn't go all the way to the end, but this video here is almost 3 minutes. I got to play the whole thing because this tells you exactly what happened and really puts a fine point on how much the mainstream media lied to us over, these MAGA people. This is MAGA country, by the way,
They took our beautiful bench. This is where we waited for Jussie to come before we attacked them. So we got here with 10 minutes to spare, and we had to plan our escape route to survey the land. His building is actually right here, right above the stairs that we're going to attack him at. We made sure we got there at 2 a.m. sharp.
On the dot.
We had no phones because he did not want us to bring any phones. He said, so we don't lose them. I don't know if that's really the reason, but you can deduce your own reason. So 2 a.m., he was nowhere to be found. He was not there. So we were like, damn, what do? We didn't have no way of contacting him. He had no way of contacting us. So we waited here for about, 4 minutes?
It was about 4 minutes,
4 minutes.
But it felt like forever.
Because it was cold as balls. So I saw him at the corner of my eye, and I was like, okay, that's him. Let's go. We gotta go get this Empire. Yeah.
That's that neck.
That's that neck.
Get that neck.
Oh, he's moving fast. Come on, let's get him.
Get that neck.
Let's get him. As we crossed the street, we said, hey, to get his attention.
Hey, Nick.
Hey. He turned around, looked at us, and that's when we started yelling the famous slurs he wanted us to yell. Hey,
aren't you that Empire?
Hey, Empire fat Nick. It's MAGA country. Yeah. And then he said, what did you say to me? And then that's when I threw the first punch at him. I held the blow because I didn't want to hurt him, of course. So I made it look real, but I held it. Then we started tussling, moving around, and then I threw him to the ground. He wanted it to look like he fought back. That was very important for him because he said, hey, don't just beat my ass, make it look like I'm fighting back and whatnot. So we did that, and then I threw him to the ground. And after I threw him to the ground, he had no bruise. I wanted it to look more real. So then I threw him to the ground. After I threw him to the ground, I used my knuckle and gave him a noogie. So I went like this. Why did I do that? To give him a scar, to give him a mark, to make it look real, like he really did get his ass beat. After I did that, I fake kicked him. I don't know what he was doing. I wasn't paying attention.
That's where I came around with the bleach, the infamous bleach in the hot sauce bottle, poured it on his shirt. Then I finally put the rope around his face. I did not put it around his neck. I just placed it on his face, and that's when we took off.
I'm not sure what happened to her sound.
Empire, but if that's the level of acting that they had in the show, I'm glad I didn't. My gosh.
Is that the first time you've seen that, John?
It is. And those are the guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the two brothers.
Man, that's hilarious that these guys basically just like, yeah, this is what we did.
If memory serves me right, they're originally from Nigeria.
Yeah.
S2. Is that your recollection too?
Yeah.
So suffice it to say, like, let's just, paint the picture here again. Tonight's episode is predicated on all these bad things that our media has done that has resulted in the lowest approval rating of all time for mainstream media. I just saw something yesterday that actually said Americans' faith and support in mainstream media has actually dipped below Congress for the first time ever. And I mean, that's saying something there. So I guess the whole point of this is that when people hear mainstream media carrying on about something like they've done for all of these things, Americans really need to think twice and say, wait a minute, is there any chance of this being realistic? Because you got to consider the source, right? And here's a great
fabrication of the crime.
Exactly.
The fabrication of the crime requires that you have a media source that's involved in it so that they can push the narrative that the FBI has built. They go out, they gather the evidence, they say, you develop your own narrative, here it is.
Which is just, it's mind-blowing, isn't it? And that's a good example too, because that was prohibited under the original Smith-Mundt Act, that a government agency could give that type of information to the media. The media used to have to disclose that, and the agency had disclosed as well. And that's one of the things that got removed during the modernization of the Smith-Mundt Act, which of course has ended up in a shit ton of hoaxes being played on the American people and turning people's brains to shit. So the next one here is the Covington hoax, and the young man, Nick Sandman, who originally the story here from the media is that these white kids from this private school, stopped these Native Americans from moving freely about and accosted them and so on and so forth. And lo and behold, here's what the end result was, right? A $250 million suit settled in favor of Nick Sandman. And so here's a meme that's pretty accurate. You believed the Russian collusion hoax, the Jussie Smollett hoax, the Covington kids hoax, the Hunter laptop disinformation hoax, and you think that we're the ones who are easily fooled by Donald Trump and people who are part of Donald Trump's organization. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, let's not, and I know that we can't really talk about it, but let's not even forget about all of 2020 and the stuff that happened there. We talked about George Floyd. There was a lot of other stuff going on in 2020 that we can't mention because of YouTube. But just remember back to that and all of the people and politicians in the news.
I mean,
just lying to you.
Are you talking about the A ticket?
So I'm not sure what you mean, S2, but I want to show something here that there are consequences to these media people spreading these lies. This is a pretty famous tweet that was made by this Reza Aslan, right? Honest question. Have you ever seen a more punchable face than this kid's? And after that, there were all kinds of threats against Nick Sandmann, which was a big part of the lawsuit, you know, that they won for $250 million against the Washington Post. But as the media lies, not only do we have people in our country believing the lies and supporting things that are not good for America, we also have them fomenting violence. And we've seen a couple examples this year already, 2 assassination attempts on Trump that we know of. Elon said that there's been 3 or 4 attempts on his life this year. He doesn't play that up too much because for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, honestly, Chris, if he would stop doing Nazi rallies in Madison Square Garden, he wouldn't get assassination attempts. I mean, seriously.
I stand corrected. You're right. I mean, clearly it's it's his fault. Did you see that Kamala tomorrow is going to be delivering a speech in DC, and it's the same place that I think it was 1922 that the KKK held a huge rally. So the sarcastic spin from the Donald Trump camp is, oh my God, Kamala Harris is KKK because she's holding a rally in the same place that the KKK did over 100 years ago. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean,
just like she stole no tax on tips.
Dance with the guy that what brung you.
It's unbelievable, right? I mean, I was thinking about this earlier when I was putting together the brief for this episode, and we could talk for days on end if we were to cover all the hoaxes that we know of, especially in recent times, right? So the next one is very, very famous, and that's the very fine people hoax. And I've got a couple videos here that I'll pull up. One of them, of course, my favorite guy, Jake Tapper.
Well, let's just talk about the fact that headline right there that you've got, Snopes.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys know this, but Snopes is not a bastion of conservatism or truth. And they saw that it was absolutely so bad of a bad narrative that they debunked this.
That's a big statement. That's a big statement at the end of the day. It really is. For them to, you know, say that on Snopes after, like I said, even recently, I've heard Joe Biden. Now, of course, he's got shit for brains, but I've heard him, you know, spew the whole fine people hoax still after all these years. I mean, it cracks me up. Let's hear this. Watch this part here. This video actually is pretty good. Goes back and forth.
Do you have it? Okay, I'm being told we have it. Thank you. Run it, please.
Excuse me, to protest. Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
That was President Trump saying that very fine people were marching alongside neo-Nazis and skinheads and white supremacists.
I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis. Believe me, not all of those people were white supremacists. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
This is a president who said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides in a Charlottesville neo-Nazi Klan march in Charlottesville, and his infamous reference to very fine people. There were, quote, very fine people on both sides of that Charlottesville, Virginia march. And candidate Trump, I tried to get him 3 times to condemn David Duke. He wouldn't do it.
Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem. I mean, this is not exactly the people you want in your party.
A lot of people think that he has a soft spot in his heart for, or at least won't condemn, white supremacists.
As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
So suffice it to say, when you hear the whole speech that he made, it's pretty clear that he wasn't saying that these bad people were very fine people. But I would hazard to guess that there's still a significant number of Obama, Biden, Harris supporters who fully believe that Trump said those things that they said he said. I'll just play this short video and we'll wrap up on this hoax and move on to the next one.
And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And you had people, and I'm not talking.
So suffice it to say that for whatever reason, this particular hoax, even though it's been disproven, even though Snopes has said that it didn't happen, we're still have to listen to people who, you know, don't go and research anything for themselves, repeat the lies over and over and over again. So in that vein, speaking of lies, let's look at the January 6th insurrection hoax that never happened. And I think what offends me the most on the January 6th stuff is them belly aching over all of these people that were supposedly killed by Donald Trump supporters, and nothing of the sort happened whatsoever. So let's hear from Tucker first.
First, they told the country that Officer Sicknick was murdered with a fire extinguisher.
Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight.
That story came from the New York Times, which is effectively the assignment editor for most of the rest of American media. It was a lie, untrue in any way. But only after that lie had hardened into conventional wisdom did the newspaper bother to retract it.
The New York Times has quietly retracted its story about the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
The damage had been done. Brian Sicknick, himself a Trump voter, had been transformed without his consent into a political martyr of the left. His memory was shamelessly exploited by the incoming Biden administration. In February of 2021, Sicknick's body lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, where a parade of unscrupulous politicians made use of it. Here's Joe Biden.
Breaking down the doors, trying to overturn an outcome of election, and killing several police officers in the meantime.
But Brian Sicknick should not be reduced to a prop for the political ambitions of the Democratic Party. He was a human being. The facts of his life matter, including how he died. To this day, media accounts describe Sicknick as someone who was, quote, slain on January 6th. The video we reviewed proves that is a lie. Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th.
So moving on from there, let's listen to Hakeem Jeffries pretend that these Capitol Police were killed on January the 6th. Here's a list of people who died: Brian Sicknick, natural causes; Howard Liebengood, suicide; Gunther Hashida, suicide; Kyle DeFreytag, suicide; Jeffrey Smith, suicide; Billy Evans, killed by an Islamist months later.
The family and loved ones of the officers who are no longer with us to read their names.
Brian David Sicknick. Howard Charles Liebengood.
Metropolitan Police Department officers Gunther Hashida, Kyle DeFreytag, and Jeffrey Smith.
Officer Billy Evans.
I think what they did here, using those people's lives to prop up their lies, is absolutely disgusting behavior on the part of these people to present this in the manner that they did. I mean, clearly not an ounce of respect for the families at all. So this one here, I don't even know who this guy is, but this is kind of funny how he keeps getting fact checked by the other guy in the video.
There was an incitement of a riot. I think the rioters went in and, killed police officers, were looking to kill Vice President Pence. From the court testimony, courts are the best proxy that we have for finding truth in this stuff. It's one of the reasons why, by the way, and when, for example, the Supreme Court says, no, that's great. That's legal process. Right?
I just have to fact check that no police officers were killed. Where are you getting that from?
I think there was one died from his injuries, and very soon after, and then
no. There was one cop who had a seizure later. It wasn't part of the riot. No police officers were killed as a part of the riot. I just have to fact check that. It's just not true.
Well, and then there's the one who committed suicide too, which is a question of
I don't know how you
causation.
can attribute that.
Yeah. So I think it was there was an incitement of a riot.
So they just keep repeating the same stuff over and over again.
I'm always interested.
Go ahead.
This is my Hillary Clinton tinfoil hat. But isn't the hallmarks of a conspiracy that the low-level people end up suicided?
Yes. That's the way it works in Hillary's world, or Hillary.
I got all the hallmarks of a Clinton disinformation campaign.
Absolutely.
I had to go there.
Why don't we ever mention the people that got killed that were Roseanne Boylan and Ashley Babbitt?
Right.
And I'm on my way there. I'm getting there. I just wanted to briefly show this one up here, where this is a couple years ago, before all of Biden's marbles fell out of his skull. But it continued saying, all these cops were killed on January 6th. It never happened. The only murder that happened was Ashley Babbitt. And it's unforgivable that Michael Byrd got away with this to this day. She did nothing that was deserving of being shot and killed. And you can see this picture here this is Michael Byrd's hand here, shooting into a crowd over here, which is where Ashley Babbitt was. I mean, it's just insanity. But
Oh yeah, and let's also mention the small detail. Let's mention the small detail that Michael Byrd was also BLM.
Right, just a small detail. So let me
And
go
Travis
back.
From, was it Portland? Across the country. And just so happened to be the guy that filmed her death.
Right. Imagine that. So
coincidences year round.
The brief that we put together for this episode is really, really long, and there's a whole bunch of other hoaxes. There's the Rittenhouse hoax. There's the border agent whipping illegals while he's on a horse. No such thing happened. Just another hoax. What's really bad with regards to that one is that they were punished for something that they didn't do, and the video clearly showed that they didn't do it. You've got the NASCAR noose hoax with Bubba, whatever his name is, Bubba Wallace. Yeah. And everybody had that same piece of rope for pulling those overhead doors down.
When I worked at Sam's Club in the tire shop,
I got one
in college, we had them.
Right. What do you got us to?
I got one on my garage door. I got one on my garage door too.
Right.
Yep.
So anyway, suffice it to say is the hoaxes go on. And
Then I
on
must
and
be a white
on.
supremacist.
Yeah, obviously. And I'm not going to cover the rest of them because we're coming up on a little over an hour and a half here. I do want to cover one last hoax, though, and I won't go into it super in depth. But in this video here, when Jen Psaki was still the, what's the position called again, John?
Press secretary.
Press secretary. Thank you. Appreciate that. That Donald Trump told people to inject bleach. And here's the reality of that situation. And I wish, chemists came up with better names, right? So how many times have you heard somebody went to the doctor and the doctor put them on prednisone, which is a corticosteroid, and then you ask them how things went, they're like, good, yeah, they put me on steroids. And without differentiating, there's a hell of a difference between anabolic steroids and corticosteroids for reducing inflammation, right? So in the same vein, there is a product out there called chlorine dioxide, and there's two parts to it, and it loses efficacy if you mix it together. So think of it like an epoxy glue going hard. So you have two components, you mix them together in a glass bowl, and it gives off all sorts of crazy, steam, whatever. Then you pour it in distilled water, and then you drink it over the course of 24 hours. And it is very, very, very effective at killing a number of different maladies, including cancer. So Todd Callender was diagnosed.
Get this, Chris. Do you know what they use chlorine dioxide in?
I know a fair bit about chlorine dioxide. Yes.
They use it for treating municipal water supplies.
Exactly. So Todd Callender was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 14. By the time he was 40, he was 109 pounds, 6 foot tall, 109 pounds, and was told by his oncologist that he had less than a few weeks to live. So his doctor was a friend of his, is giving Todd a ride, and he said, we're going to swing by your house. You're going to grab a travel bag. And Todd said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, we're going to go to Mexico, and we're going to go to this clinic, and we're going to try chlorine dioxide. And Todd's initial reaction was, that sounds pretty hokey. Why would we do that? And his doctor turned around, looked at him, and said, what have you got to lose? And that struck a chord with Todd. 4 weeks after the doctors gave him a death sentence, he walked back into their office. And for the first time since he was 14 years old, there was no trace of cancer. It's highly possible that this video will get smoked on YouTube because I'm discussing chlorine dioxide. So be it. But there's a reason I skipped all the other hoaxes to come to this one before we wrapped up. I'm not going to name any names, but we have a very, very loyal follower of Survival Dispatch who was diagnosed with cancer months ago, brought it to my attention. I introduced this person to Todd Callender. Todd Callender's assistant sent out a care package with the chlorine dioxide in it. And a couple of weeks ago, this guy reached back out to me. He said, you won't believe this. I went to the doctor, and the tumor in my kidney is dead, and I don't have to have surgery. My body will just absorb it. Cannot believe that I'm cured. And that's without even mentioning all of the other anti-parasitic drugs that nuke cancer. And I'm not going to name them because as soon as I do, I know we'll get nuked for sure. But some forms of cancer are parasitic in nature, but all forms of cancer are constantly mutating, right? And those anti-parasitic drugs stop that mutation and growth. And we've got another very good friend of ours here at Survival Dispatch News who has prostate cancer right now. And we just sent him a study, a peer-reviewed long-term study on those antiparasitics. And there was a 100% cure rate for prostate cancer. And we're hoping that it does the same thing for our good friend. So that's why I skipped ahead over all of that. Let's get to the meat of the matter here as far as action items. What can our audience do in light of everything that we've discussed on this episode? So I've got a few points I'm going to rhyme off. Then I'll go to John, then S2 to get their thoughts. And we'll do the conflicted answers, and we'll wrap this thing up. So number one, and I'm using this language for a very specific reason, stop using Google. It will turn your brain to shit. We have a family member who anytime any topic comes up, they go straight to Google. Well, Google says this, like it's some sort of all-knowing oracle. If you go to a search engine and you punch in, can men get pregnant? And it comes back in the affirmative, your search engine is garbage. It is nothing but bullshit, left-wing socialist narratives. Stop using it. If you want to get real results, use Yandex, Yandex.com, or search.brave.com, which is also built into the Brave web browser, which is based on the same code base as Chrome. So it works really, really well. But you got to consider the source, which is the next bullet that I have on my list. So if it's Google, YouTube, Facebook, look at all the censorship that's happened on Facebook and all the access to user accounts that they gave to government agencies so that people could be suppressed and deleted. When I say consider the source, CNN, MSNBC, even some stuff on Fox News, Rachel Maddow, Jake Tapper, if these people are telling you something, the chances are very, very high that it's complete and utter bullshit. But if you go to Google and you punch it in, Google is going to return in the affirmative. So people are like, well, Jake Tapper said this, or Anderson Cooper said this. So therefore, it must be true. I even checked Google and Google said it was true. It's not true. So consider the source. And
sheeple.
Yeah. In reality, when it comes to the mainstream media, you should take everything they say with a grain of salt. Be skeptical until you do your own research. Here's something that a lot of people are guilty of. They read the headline and they never go any further, and then they keep regurgitating that headline. So not only did they not read the whole article, they didn't do any research on it or anything like that. And yes, thank you, Angel, for putting that up. Chlorine dioxide is not bleach at all. But again, we've got this confusion in names like steroids, corticosteroids. Next one that's really important, it's my last one here. There is a group called NewsGuard, and they market themselves as the Internet Trust Tool. It is government-funded propaganda meant to appear as an independent third party. So you'll see, a notation that says, the allegations made in this story were confirmed by NewsGuard. That means 100%, no ifs, ands, or buts. It is 100% government propaganda and bullshit. And again, they think we're stupid, that we'll never figure this stuff out. And maybe some of us don't figure it out, but some of us do. John, any additional thoughts on your part on what our followers can do to protect themselves against all the misinformation, disinformation, hoax crap that's out there?
Follow Survival Dispatch News.
All right, I'll give you the $100 after the episode.
No, and I will say this about us. There's it's not just us, but I do think that we try and get it right. We try and use our own intelligence and ability to disseminate and decipher information and try and get things right more often than not. If we get something wrong, we're going to admit it. Unlike the mainstream media, we're going to actually say, hey, we got that wrong. No worries. We're going to do better next time. There's a lot out there.
Case in point, John, remember when we got those early reports that Chimney Rock, North Carolina was so, beat up by Helene that they were just going to bulldoze it? And we reported that because that's what we heard. And then a week or so later, we came back and said that wasn't true. We apologize for the misinformation. We didn't do it on purpose. But, so sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to mention.
No, you're good. Do your own research. This is what 2020 and the pandemic was such a big deal about, doing your own research. Stop sucking from the government information hose, because it's not going to get you anywhere but in the place of a sheep. They have a ultimate goal, and that ultimate goal is for you to not be in control of your own life. That's the ultimate goal. Yeah, take it back. We talked at the beginning of this how the media is shifting to citizen journalism. That's a beautiful thing. But you also have people that are going to try and get clickbait. They're going to try and do all of this stuff. So be careful and check and do your own research. Don't take anybody's word for the gospel.
Including ours.
Including ours. Yep. And I think that is the key, is that we have to learn how to use this thing. We have to learn how to critically think. It is something that is an almost lost art nowadays. But if you don't know how to critically think, you're going to be taken advantage of. At the first part of the pandemic in 2020, I was taken advantage of because I was like, oh man, this could be so bad. And about a week went by, and then I started looking around. I was like, none of this adds up, guys. None of it. It makes no sense. And then I started doing a little bit more research and I found out why it didn't make sense. And it didn't take long.
I'd add, John, that if we get something wrong, send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com. Show us how we got it wrong. And not only will we come back in another episode and admit that we're wrong, we'll give you props for finding something. We're humans, we make mistakes. I don't tell anybody that we're, the all-knowing oracles.
Well, we don't have, it's like really probably the three of us that do a lot of the research in this show. The three of us that are on tonight. And we don't have massive research teams like these big news organizations do. We don't have, 50 people doing research work for us, both full-time and part-time. We're not there. We have to dig this stuff up ourselves. And so, yeah, there's going to be things that we miss, but we try. The key word is we try to get it right.
Yeah, and we try to bring in other people who know more on a specific subject than we do.
Matter experts.
So I got to tell you a quick funny story before we go to S2. So years ago, my wife bought me a bicycle horn because I'd be reading something and I'd start cussing and she'd say, "Oh, what are you reading now?" And I'd say, "Oh my God, this is happening or that's happening." So she buys me this clown horn basically for Christmas years ago, so that anytime I read some bullshit that I could honk the horn. Very cathartic, made me feel better. And she would then say, "Well, what are you reading or what are you watching now? And what's the latest bit of bullshit?" Well, this microphone that's over my head, studio mic, much like other studio mics, cuts out background noise and certain frequencies and stuff. And my horn does not work with this mic. And it has driven me nuts forever because do you know how many times somebody talks something, John, and I want to reach behind my laptop and grab my horn and just honk it to say that's complete bullshit. And I can't do it. So I get all this, pent up anger and anxiety over it. And I have to take it out, my training outside instead. But S2, your recommendations for our audience, our followers to escape the bullshit, not hoaxes, just bullshit.
Yeah, so I apologize if this is coming through a little bit with some latency. I'm getting a lot of bad lag tonight. What I'm going to say about this is I have spent the last 4 to 5 years trying to educate people on what's been going on. And I've had people send me videos of military equipment on train tracks and everybody going nuts over that. The whole helicopters at the Capitol yesterday. That was another thing. Guys, that's an annual drill that they've been holding since 2002. They did it in 2002 with 4 Ospreys. You got to go out and you got to start looking at this stuff with a critical mind. It's not everything is the world's coming to an end and martial law is coming to our streets tomorrow. It's not that. And to your point, Chris, the one thing that you said is people read the headline and they don't read the actual damn article. The devil's in the details, guys. You got to read past the headlines. If you don't read past the headlines, I can make up a headline that says, pardon my analogy here, but I could make up a headline that says Jesus landed on Earth last night. And then put something completely different in the article, and you won't even know what I meant by that. So you got to read the articles. And then secondly, go out there when you see something out there that perks your interest or piques your interest, go out there and find 2 or 3 sources of it. But like Chris says, don't use Google. When Chris said that Jake Tapper and Snopes said it was bullshit, I was going to say, okay, I go out there and I search Google. Am I going to find out that Google says Jake Tapper said it was bullshit too?
Right.
I'll give you a prime example today. There was a post that came out on Twitter or X today that said that the Russians killed a special operations forces soldier while they were trying to make an incursion into Russia. Okay, for starters, I went out there. It took me 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes. I went out there and I did a search on this guy's name, come down to find out that this guy was an artillery gunnery sergeant for the Marine Corps. The pictures that they showed in the article showed he was wearing a Marine uniform with the Marine fruit salad to go with it. They didn't even get his name right. But what we did find out of that was that he left the Marine Corps in 2021 and went and joined the Ukrainian military over there. So in effect, the Russians killed Ukrainian military guy, not a special operations forces soldier. But like I said, with a little bit, just a little bit of time, you can go out there and you can find out what the truth is. It's out there. You just got to not accept everything at face value. Question everything.
Yeah, be skeptical.
Yep.
Somebody asked the search engines I recommended, Yandex, yandex.com, and search.brave.com are the two that I use the most. We got to get to the conflicted question and wrap this up, but I do want to give a quick plug to our insiders on Patreon, patreon.com/survival dispatch. There are free memberships, get you access to about 50% of what we put up over there. We don't make very much public, but we do make lots that's even for the free members. The paying members is $9.99 a month. You get all the content. You get all of our briefs for all episodes. You get behind the scenes content, early access to content. You get our 228-page essentials guide. If the shit hit the fan and you had nothing but that guide, you would have enough information at your fingertips to get by. And for a week now, we started up a Signal chat group, and it's morphed and grown into something bigger than what we had have imagined. So
those comments are crazy, folks. You're missing out if you're not an insider.
I never anticipated this, John. All I was looking for was some way to disseminate intel if and when, everything goes to shit, right? Like say YouTube goes down, whatever. But what it's turned into is a 24/7 chat line for all things that are survival and prepping related and politics, you name it. I've told a story before. It's bedtime. There's like 150 something. I swipe it all red because I can't get caught up. I wake up the next morning. There's another 150. I mean, it's free. It's super active. So the process there quickly is if you are an insider, $9.99 a month, download and install Signal on your phone first. You can then install it on other devices, but you need to attach it to your phone number. Then send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com with your phone number, and you will get an invite to join the Signal group. It's not something that you can search on or find. You have to specifically have an invitation to it. So, John, I'm going to go to you first on the conflicted question. What is the perfect weapon for home defense and why?
Well, for me, it is something that is not too heavy, effective at close ranges, effective at long ranges, and is easy enough that my 12-year-old could use it, my wife could use it, probably my 9-year-old could use it, and that is an AR-15. There's a reason why they hate these weapons, is because they're effective and they're easy to handle for a female, somebody who doesn't shoot guns a lot. They're a very effective weapon, and if you have the right ammunition, some 77 grain heavier hitting bullets, they will absolutely do the job.
So I'm right there with you, and I've got 5.56 SBRs that are suppressed, and I have 300 blackout SBRs that are suppressed. My preference is the 300 blackout for a few reasons. With subsonic ammo, I don't have to worry about going into auditory exclusion or losing my hearing. And also because it's subsonic, the chances of it going through walls and killing somebody, in another room or mostly in other homes, like the home beside you, that's greatly diminished. This is a 300 blackout AR pistol. It's currently set up with the Blackbeard system, the Blackbeard X system for training. And I've got a bunch of these. So I leave one of them set up like this. So if I'm dry fire training, I can train with the Mantis X. This is the Blackbeard X, by the way, and it connects to your phone and gives you all kinds of great information. For example, just on the mechanics of things, if you're looking down the sight like this and you have the gun cantilevered, it'll penalize you. So it gets you in the habit of always keeping it in a perfectly upright position. It also measures, and I'm exaggerating here, but it measures where the barrel's going before, during, and after the trigger pull. And it shows it in 3 different colors. And way back when, like, it's been years since this came out, since I got it, I kept having problems with my second shot with these guys. And it was the trigger stuff that clued me into where I was causing a problem. A little bit too heavy on my trigger finger and was pulling the gun and making it do this sort of stuff on the end. I will say this is a great tool to improve all of your mechanics. It's good because you're using your trigger. You know, it's just a real gun that you're using. So you get used to all the stuff with it, the form factor. All of my SBRs are set up identical with an in-force light, and that's visible and IR plus a can on it. So I can pick up any of them. They all feel the same, muscle memory, et cetera, et cetera. But SBR, AR is my choice. You don't have to, when you're going through transitionary points, if this was a carbine and you were going through a doorway, you now have to learn a different skill of raising the rifle up over your shoulder to traverse those spaces. With a short barrel rifle or AR pistol like this, you don't have to do that. So it's one less thing that you have to train and get good at and memorize. But between dry fire and live fire, I put 1,000 rounds downrange every week with a 300 blackout SBR. And I will say this is the best tool for me for home defense. The best tool for you might be something different, and that's okay. I'm not into forcing my choices on other people. I'm not the best pistol shot in the world. I'm not bad. But when it comes to SBRs and ARs, are there going to be guys better than me? There's always somebody better. But I put my skills up against just about anybody with these things. S2, your call on the best weapon for home defense.
The best weapon that you have for home defense is the one that you have in your hand or within arm's reach at the time of the event that you are proficient with. I don't care if it's a knife. I don't care if it's a pistol. I don't care if it's a rifle. I don't care if it's a baseball bat. But pro tip with the baseball bat, my wife clued me into this the other day. Put a sock on the end of your baseball bat if you're going to hit somebody with it. Because if you're going to hit somebody with it and they interdict you swinging that baseball bat at them, they're going to pull that sock off there like a condom and you're still going to make contact.
Great tip. So I like that. That's classic. I had a cop years ago, S2, say to me, I had a bat in my truck, and he said something about it. He's a friend of mine. And I said, yeah, I've always got Peacemaker sitting behind the seat there. And he said, what you need to do is put a baseball glove with a baseball in it back there as well, so that no DA could turn around and say, well, you were, this was premeditated when you hit this guy with a baseball bat, because clearly you don't have anything else to play baseball with. I mean, I don't know if that would hold true in the past or today, but it was an interesting comment on his part. Either way, we will be back.
The point that I'm making, the point that I'm making is that it's fine to train with firearms of multiple calibers, multiple platforms, but there are also other things that you need to train also. And whether that's impermissive weapons, whether that's improvised weapons, whether that's a knife, you need to train on all of them in some way, shape, or form, because you don't know where you're going to be and what you're going to have access to at any given point.
So the alternative to that is to do what I do and hide guns all over the house. So I'm never more than a couple feet away from a gun.
I wish I could do that, but I have a 4-year-old that's into everything. So yeah. Real quick, I wanted to go ahead and do a shout out. I put this out earlier. The Righteous Savages podcast channel, I'm putting it out as a shout out. If you guys want to follow that on election night, prior to the Survival Dispatch massive stream, I'm going to be doing some Q&A work for about an hour before. So if you guys join that channel, follow it. I'll be doing a live, and then we'll go straight into the live, the big live with everybody. That is 1 week from tonight. Next week, this will not be the end of the stream. I can tell you that.
Yes.
So 7 o'clock Eastern next next Tuesday, and we'll be kicking off the pregame, I guess you could call it, around 6 Eastern, 5 Central, and just kind of doing some quick chat with all you guys, kind of getting everybody's feelings about what's going on, talking about maybe some quick news of the day before we jump into election results and all of the craziness that will ensue for probably weeks afterwards. But go ahead and subscribe to that channel. And then next Thursday, our first official episode of the Righteous Savages podcast. We've moved our podcast over from our regular channel to this channel. We've got a brand new episode with Dave Roden, who is an industry expert in the tactical firearms industry, worked for 511, now works for Vertex, talking about kind of the inner workings of the firearms tactical world, how developing products happens and all that stuff. It's a really interesting episode, so we hope you guys will join us for that. But that's all I've got for my shameless plug. I appreciate everybody.
Likewise, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless America. All righty, another one in the books. We're closing in on episode